Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar session on planning and delivering an EVM assessment, who, when, and how. We're happy to see you all joining us today. Please don't hesitate to say where you are from and introduce yourself in the chat box. We'd be happy to know who's with us today. I'm happy to have today Dan Brigden and Adama Sawadogo, who will discuss this topic. This session is recorded, and we will share the links to the recording as well as the presentation by email after the session. Everything will be also made available on the TechNet 21 platform. Next slide, please, Dan. Thank you. So this session is the second session of a four-part series. The last part was last week, and the title of which was "What is effective vaccine management and why is it so important?" All the material is available on TechNet, on the TechNet 21 website. I will provide you with the link to reach the material in the chat box. I will also send you by email all the links so that you can have access to all the material of the series. The next one in English is next week on Thursday, and it's developing, implementing, and validating the successful continuous improvement plan. And the one after is on Friday the 24th. What does EVM tell us about the evolution of immunization supply chains from 2010 to 2022? Something I should not forget to mention, the three sessions, the session number 2, 3, and 4, will be made available exclusively in French, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm going to speak a little bit of French very shortly for our francophone community. Les trois sessions 2, 3 et 4 seront faites en français mardi prochain, qui sera donc, attendez, je regarde mon agenda, mardi 14, il y aura la session d'aujourd'hui qui sera exclusivement faite en français. Qu'est-ce que la gestion efficace des vaccins, GEV, et pourquoi est-elle si importante? La semaine d'après, ce sera le mardi 21 juin, ce sera la session 3, développer, mettre en œuvre et valider un plan d'amélioration continue réussi. Et la semaine d'après, ce sera le 30, si je ne me trompe pas, je regarde, ce sera donc on a le 14, le 21 et le 28. Donc le mardi 28, ce sera la 4e session que nous apprend la GEV sur l'évolution des chaînes logistiques de la vaccination de 2010 à 2022. Back to English. Sorry for this short explanation in French for our francophone community.
Alex?
Oui.
Juste une petite correction. Quand tu as dit les sessions 2, 3 et 4, mais tu as lu la session 1.
J'ai lu la session 1.
What is effective vaccine management and why it is so important? Au lieu de lire planning and delivering an EVM assessment.
Juste
une correction.
Merci beaucoup Modibo. Modibo qui est sous le nom de Solo. Je changerai ton nom tout à l'heure. Merci beaucoup. Back to English. For francophone community, you can listen to this presentation in French. Just use the globe at the bottom of your window, of your Zoom window. Click on it. It's interpretation, and then select French. You can also cut the original sound by using couper l'audio original. And let me tell you that in French, just for francophones who may struggle with English, pour écouter cette présentation en français, vous pouvez utiliser le globe qui est en bas de votre fenêtre et choisir interprétation. Choisissez français. Vous pouvez aussi couper l'audio original pour avoir un meilleur son, une meilleure qualité du son en français de l'interprétation. I think that's it. Dan, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Alex. Okay, so hi everyone, welcome and welcome back to those who joined us for the first session in this EVM webinar last week. The first session in the series last week was a sort of overview of what is EVM and how does it contribute to the CIP. And today we're going to be going into a bit more detail and talking about who is an EVM for, when should it be conducted, how is it conducted, and we're going to walk through the process of conducting an EVM assessment from the early stages of the preparation to creating the assessment, to collecting the data, to finalizing the assessment, and then hopefully at the end we'll have a good amount of time for some questions and answers. Okay, so I presented this slide last week, but I think it's really important that we just are all on the same page at the beginning of understanding what is EVM. And EVM is composed, as I see it, of 5 key pieces, all of which are interconnected and together set the standard for the vaccine supply chain. What does it mean setting a standard for the vaccine supply chain? Well, perhaps the most important part of EVM are the standards. And in EVM parlance, we call those requirements. And there are 900 of these. And together, these are the set of standards that define the optimal immunization supply chain for any country in the world, not one country, but all countries. And that's the brain of EVM, if you like, that sets these standards. But that's not all EVM is. EVM has 4 other components that support these standards. The first is the questionnaire. The questionnaire is essentially a whole list of questions, maybe 1,000 questions, perhaps even more, that sole purpose is to assess if a health facility meets the standards set by EVM. And that's a key distinction between the standards that EVM sets and the questionnaire that is used to assess those standards. In EVM 1, these things were the same, but in EVM 2, we have separated them. The third sort of component of EVM is the administrative piece that enables countries to create and deliver assessments and also to analyze the results. This is the secure website that's available and hosted by WHO on the WHO website. This is for creating and managing assessments, analyzing which standards have been met at different levels, at different facilities, and for understanding and analyzing the results of an EVM assessment. The fourth part is perhaps the most visible, and that's the mobile app that we have released. It's called the EVM Assessor mobile app, and you can download that on any of the app stores you use. The Android Play Store, the Apple App Store, or the Microsoft Store. Finally, we have the 5th component is the improvement planning tool that is used to develop a continuous improvement plan based on the EVM assessment findings. And together, these 5 components make up EVM. So these are the different parts. And if you joined us last week, you'll be familiar with this round continuous process of assessing, planning, implementing, and monitoring. So let me give you some detail of how we get from the preparation phase to the monitoring. But when I was creating this PowerPoint earlier this week, I realized that I didn't directly talk to the main question, the title of this webinar, which is who, when, and how. So I put this slide together to do it in one. Who? Well, the answer is everyone can conduct an EVM assessment. And to be more precise, it's anyone with a mobile phone or a mobile device and a data connection. And for a full national assessment, that who is mainly Ministry of Health and EPI staff, health facility managers, cold chain technicians, implementing partners like UNICEF and WHO, etc. When? Well, the standard answer to that is for a full national assessment every 3 to 5 years. But other types of assessment, and I'll talk about these shortly, such as targeted assessments, supervisory assessments, can be conducted at any time and at any frequency. What do I mean by everyone? I think what I mean is that the insights that EVM can give you on your supply chain performance are not restricted to the national assessment. Anyone can create an EVM account. Anyone can download the app, and anyone can assess a health facility at any level, not just one, but any number of health facilities, wherever and whenever they want with this tool. For example, a district store manager who wants to can download the app, create an EVM account, and assess his or her facility. They can then analyze the results, implement their own improvement plan, and then validate the improvement activities by reassessing the facility, maybe 6 months later or 12 months later. And here I have it in 10 steps, 10 simple steps, the whole process of how an EVM assessment should be conducted. The first 4 parts relate to the preparation phase, and these are really critical. You need to get buy-in from all your improvement plan stakeholders and agree the timeline. This is essentially saying that if you want to make an EVM assessment and you want to improve your supply chain, you will need at the very, very beginning to ensure that all the decision makers and the stakeholders are on board with where you're going. Because if they are not, you will not be able to implement an improvement plan successfully. So that's the first phase, get the buy-in from all stakeholders. The second is related, and it's to secure the funding and secure the HR resources necessary to conduct the EVM assessment. If you have a grand plan to conduct a national assessment in India or China and you want to assess 500 facilities, but you don't have the funding or the HR resources to pull it off, this is not going to go anywhere. So hopefully, having completed 1 and 2, the first 2 steps of the preparation, you'll have a good grounding to continue this EVM assessment. And you can move on to the practical parts, which are number 3, conduct your EVM manager training. EVM managers are those people within the country, typically at the Ministry of Health or implementing partner country level, that are going to take control of managing the EVM assessment delivery and the assessment creation. The fourth, and that typically takes 2 days. The fourth part is to complete the EVM country setup. And once that has been done, all of the preparation is now ready and the assessment can begin, which are the following 4 steps. Number 5, create the assessment itself on the EVM website. 6, conduct the EVM Assessor training, which typically takes 5 days. 7, conduct the actual data collection, which can be as long or as short as the ambition of the EVM assessment. It may be 1 facility if it's a targeted assessment, or it may be 1,000 facilities if it's an extremely large national assessment. However, whatever the size, all the data must be collected. And then step 8 is to review and validate and finalize that data so that the EVM assessment can be marked as complete and finished. And at that point, you have now completed your EVM assessment. But that's not the end. In fact, that's only, one could argue, the prelude to the real work, which is steps 9 and 10, which is conducting the CIP workshop, finalizing the CIP, the continuous improvement plan, and then finally, number 10, implement that plan and monitor it and ensure it is successful. There's a short video here that perhaps some of you have seen, and if you haven't, I recommend it because it will give you a good overview of the entire EVM process. I won't play it for you now, but we will share it in the chat, and perhaps if you haven't seen it, you can watch it after this webinar ends. So let's go back to the beginning. Let's talk about the preparation. I mentioned the necessity of getting the buy-in from all of your stakeholders and securing the necessary funding. Also finalizing the timeline. That's critical to make sure that the plan is agreed with everyone and is realistic and can be followed. Then it's conducting the training, the EVM manager training and the EVM assessor training. And it's also, what I'll talk about in a little bit more detail on this call, completing the EVM country setup. I put here, it takes X days because X defines the number that can be very different and can vary between country. If the country has a lot of the setup information available and ready to hand, such as an inventory of all health facilities and a complete list of all vaccine products that are used in the national schedule, down to the exact product name, then this setup stage, it takes very little time, and perhaps a matter of an hour or two. However, if the country is lacking this, then it can take an awfully long time to complete. So it's an unknown number, but it usually takes in a number of a couple of days, typically. Now, I mentioned this secure website that is hosted by WHO. What is it? Well, it's a private web portal hosted by WHO, and it's private for every country in the world. All country-specific EVM activities can be completed on our web portal. And once that setup has been completed, EVM assessments can be created and delivered much easier. What that means is the first time it's done, it takes a bit of time. And afterwards, it's a much, much easier process to create second and third and fourth and fifth follow-up EVM assessments. The data collection it uses the EVM Assessor mobile app that I mentioned before. This is what it looks like as a little diagram of the architecture, rather simplified, but you can see in the middle here, there's a website that you can access on your desktop or your mobile device that is the EVM Manager website for overseeing the entire EVM project. And that is used by the EVM managers for their assessment management and their analysis. And the URL, the link to the website is provided there. We can also put it in the chat in a little while. On the right, you can see the image of a mobile phone, a tablet, and a laptop. This is to indicate the apps where the data collection takes place. And the data that's collected on those apps is communicated back to the EVM Manager website and is available for analysis on that website. On the left, you can see that the software and the database is hosted entirely by WHO, so there are no administrative costs to bear by any country or any individual wanting to conduct an EVM assessment. Here's what the website looks like. There are 3 key steps you need to take. First, you need to create an account. Second, you must configure the country accounts, the access for that country. And the third, the setup that I mentioned must be completed. Before I talk about those, I'll say a few words about EVM data security policies, because this is critically important for WHO. The EVM tool has been designed to ensure that national policies of data confidentiality are respected. And we accomplish this in 3 ways. 1, we totally restrict access to the EVM tool to approved and authenticated users only. Second, we enforce very strict role-based administration that ensures only designated people have access to the country data, meaning that once a national manager is designated, it is their responsibility to assign access further to that to other users, for example, by giving another user access to their country data. No other access is permitted to that data. And thirdly, we follow organization-wide data storage policies and best practices. Before I show you the EVM Manager website and go through a few things, I just want to let you know that there is a lot of help out there for EVM managers, especially those learning. So you can see here, there's a link to a page on the technet21.org website, which is the EVM topics page. And this is used to list all of the resources that are available. And it provides national, subnational, independent EVM managers with comprehensive guidance on how to use, how to set up, how to create, and how to deliver EVM assessments. You can see there are some available in English, some available in French, and even including the EVM2 process video that I described before. There's also a quick start guide that you may find useful if you want to get up to speed quickly on EVM. And there's also a much more detailed manager guide that is very detailed and contains all the information you possibly might need to know when using this tool. And of course, the EVM2 process video. So let's get started. You need to create an account if you're new to EVM and you want to explore what EVM can do for you. So if you are considering becoming a national manager, or if you're a country and you want to start the process of creating an EVM assessment, the first thing we need is someone who's going to be the focal point for that country. That's the person who's going to be responsible for managing all the other roles in EVM for that country. We call this person the country manager. And once they have an account, they can sign into the EVM website and assign roles to others. You don't have to be a country manager though, and I'll explain why on the next slide. But before I do, I'll just show you this diagram that explains the process of creating an EVM account. Let's approach from the left-hand side. If you have an EVM, a WHO email address, the good news is that you can skip almost all the steps and you can go straight to the EVM website and you can sign in using your WHO email and your WHO password. And from there, you can request a role for any country you wish. For the majority of users who don't have a WHO email, you will need to request access. How is this done? Well, it's completed by sending an email to evmadmin@who.int. I've got that email on the next slide. Don't worry, you don't need to write it down. But the process is that once you send that email, an invitation email will be sent back to you. You will receive that, hopefully not in your spam or junk mail folders, but you receive it and then you will accept the invitation in the email. And that looks, I've got a screenshot of what it looks like on the next slide. It's a button, it's a link you press saying accept invitation. And once you've done that, you can then sign into the website. This is what the email looks like. It's got a little picture of me there. And it has some information of everything you need. And that's the email you need to send your request to. And at the bottom of the email is this link here, accept invitation. That's the key thing that you need to press, and you'll be taken to the WHO EVM website once you click accept invitation. Here's a WHO, here's the EVM website. And in the top left, there are 3 horizontal bars in green. Click that and you will be able to access the menu. Click sign in and you'll be taken to this page. What is this page? And more importantly, what is this thing in the top right that's called My Facilities? Well, My Facilities is actually an extremely important concept in EVM, and it's worth explaining it in some detail. I mentioned at the bottom here, I put this slide together earlier on, you may recall, called Who, It's for Everyone, and that insights from EVM are not restricted to a national EVM assessment. They are not restricted because everyone in the world who has an account with EVM has access to My Facilities. That is essentially their own private country, meaning that they do not have to be part of their national setup in order to conduct their own EVM assessment. They can do so in My Facilities. And in all respects, My Facilities operates in the same way as a country. Therefore, there's no distinction other than My Facilities is not regarded as an official country, and therefore the national any national EVM assessment scores don't count. But otherwise, it's exactly the same. Now, I was mentioning earlier that role-based access is something that's really important in EVM. It's something that enables us to be sure of all access to countries' assessment and setup data in EVM. By default, all new EVM users only have access to My Facilities, this thing here. This is their personal area. They have no role for any country. But the country manager can assign any of these following roles to an EVM user. And an EVM user can also request these roles. And when they do so, the EVM manager will receive an email about it. So there are 4 roles that you can be given in a country. You can be an assessor for a country. You can be the national manager for a country. You can be the subnational manager for a country, a manager for only a part of the country, perhaps a province or a state. Or you can be an observer. An observer is the same as a manager, except that the observer is unable to edit any values. They can only view rather than make any changes. For example, a user can have different roles for any number of different countries. So, for example, the same user could be an assessor for one country, let's say Angola, a country manager for Bangladesh, a subnational manager for California in the USA, and an observer for Tajikistan. And all of these roles would be discrete and separate from the other. Therefore, one could be removed, or they could all be removed, or additional access could be provided. I mentioned before about subnational management. This is very important for larger countries or for countries with decentralized administrative or political structures. EVM can cater for countries with these subnational systems. For example, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, which is the full name of the UK. And there are 4 nations under that. And if it's desired for political reasons that each subnational nation is regarded as independently of the other, EVM can accommodate that and give access based on subnational identities. So maybe now you're thinking, I want to be a manager for a country. Well, anyone with an EVM account can request access at any time. And when they do so, the country manager can approve or reject that request. If there's no manager for that country who exists, you will need to contact your WHO or UNICEF immunization focal point, who will act as the gatekeeper of that access. Because as I say, once the first country manager is assigned, that country manager becomes the focal point for that country. And the ultimate decision for that lies in the country's Ministry of Health or EPI department. And as I mentioned before, if you don't want to be a country manager, you can still be an independent manager and create your own assessments using My Facilities. Okay, so we're halfway through the setup phase now before we can get to the really exciting part of creating an assessment. What remains is the country setup activities that need to be done. There are 3 of them, and we don't have time on this call to go through them, but I'll explain them now. First of all, we need to add the administrative units for the country, which is, in other words, the geopolitical structure of the country. In America, that would be the states. In other countries, that might be provinces or regions, or even in the UK, it might be the 4 countries underneath the UK. Whatever it is, those administrative units need to be provided. And those are they can be entirely separate to the supply chain hierarchy. They may be identical, they may be entirely separate. It depends on the country. The second task is to add the locations, and this is all of the health facilities that store vaccines or provide immunization services. So essentially, that's a master facility list of every health facility in the country that needs to be provided, and we need to enter that into EVM. And that's necessary in order for us to start making random samplings of every facility. The third and final task is to add the vaccines in the country. These are all the vaccine products used in the national schedule. Okay, so I think I've summarized the administrative units. I'm not going to go into these in more detail, but I have shared these slides already. So if you're interested and want to know more about the administrative units or the locations, etc., please take a look at them here. I'll just give you one example. This is for Rwanda, as we were recently in Kigali for an EVM capacity building training workshop. Our administrative units here, assuming Wikipedia is correct, not always the case, but if it is, Wikipedia would tell us that for Rwanda, the administrative unit hierarchy would be first the province, the second the district, and the third the sector. And here in this image, you see the provinces, and underneath them, the districts shown here in this table, and the sector. And in EVM, it would look like this. Here are the 5 top-level administrative units. And underneath each of these, if I expanded these, you would see, what are they? The districts, the 7 districts underneath this province. For the locations, we can either add these one by one, which I would not recommend if there's more than about 10 or so in the country. But more realistically, we can use an import, Microsoft Excel import-export tool to add everything in the right format. If the country has an up-to-date inventory of all health facilities, this step is very straightforward. If not, it can take some time and be quite labor-intensive. And the locations must be associated by the administrative unit in which they're located. Here's what it looks like. We've switched countries. We're staying in East Africa, but we're moving to Kenya, and we're looking at the locations here. We see that there are 7,605 active locations, starting with the primary store, the national vaccine store, and at the subnational level, there's a subnational regional store here that supplies this store here, which is an LD store, meaning the lowest distribution level. And underneath that, there are 17 service provision points or health clinics that provide immunization services. Here they are listed. All of this needs to be added in for every country before we can start creating full national assessments. If, however, we only want to conduct an assessment of one facility, perhaps in my facilities, just to explore the tool or to make an improvement plan for a facility that we manage, for example, we can do so. We don't need to enter thousands and thousands of facilities. We could enter only one if we wanted. The vaccines, we're just going to add, it's a straightforward process if you know your vaccine products, and it's especially easy if it is a PQS vaccine. That's done. We've done the setup. Congratulations to us. We need to move on now to the assessment phase. I spoke last week about this, the 4 different flavors in which EVM assessments come in. The type, whether to use a random site selection or to pick locations. The range, whether to choose locations from the entire country or from specific areas. The sample, whether to make a single random site selection for the entire country, or whether to make individual random site selections for every province or state, or in EVM parlance, administrative unit. And fourth and finally, we can change the scope. We can decide whether to assess all EVM requirements or only a subset. Expressed as a flow diagram, this is what it looks like. Coming from the top, you create an assessment, and then you decide what type of assessment you wish to create, full or targeted. If you wish to create a full assessment, you can then choose the range. It's either the national or subnational. If you choose national, you can choose whether the sample can be a multiple sample or a single sample. And then you choose the scope, whether it's all EVM categories and criteria, or whether it's just some of them. Now you see that the ones marked in the light gray indicate the type of EVM assessment that is required for validation by the EVM Secretariat, meaning that this will be, for it to be regarded as something that meets the benchmark of a full national EVM assessment that can be used by others globally as a global benchmark. It needs to be a full assessment. It needs to be a national assessment. It can be either a single or a multiple sample assessment, but the scope must be all. It must assess everything. And if it is not, then that assessment is can be used by the country fully, but is not regarded as a full national assessment in EVM terms. Here are some example assessments to illustrate the different ways in which we can use EVM assessments. There are 5 examples here. The first is the traditional or the classic EVM assessment. It's an assessment covering the whole country, assessing everything. So the type is full, the range is national, the sample is single, and the scope is all. That's the standard model, if you will, of EVM assessments. If alternatively you wish to assess only 2 states in your country, and ignore the rest, but you wish to assess everything, then you can do that. You can create a full assessment, but it will not be a national, it will be a subnational. And here, for example, we've said it will be California and Oregon only if we are in the USA. The sample will be single, the scope will be all. Perhaps, on the other hand, we want to create an assessment of all private sector health clinics only at service provision level, but we want to assess everything. We can do that. We can create a targeted assessment. There will be no range or sample because we will be selecting private sector facilities, and we will be assessing everything. Now let's take another example. We want to assess temperature management at facilities in 1 state only where poor temperature management is suspected. We can do that. Again, we create a targeted assessment. We're not using the range and the sample because we already know what state we want to conduct our assessment in. And the scope will not be all, the scope will be partial because it will be E2, which is the EVM criteria, the temperature management. We will select that only. And finally, our 5th example is an assessment of waste management equipment in only 1 state. So this will be a full assessment. It will be a subnational. It will be full because we're using a random site selection to choose randomly the facilities to assess. It will be subnational because it's California only. There will be a single sample. And like our example here of temperature management, it will be partial in scope because it's E9 and C2 equipment only. So hopefully with these illustrations, you can see that the EVM tool is quite versatile, can be used in different contexts to satisfy the country's requirements. Looking at the process of delivering the EVM assessment, there are, as I see it, there are 3 stages and involving 2 different actors. The first is the EVM manager, who begins and ends the process. And in the middle is the EVM assessor, who is the one who's in control of collecting the data at as high a reliability as possible. What does the EVM manager do to kick things off? Well, the EVM manager is creating the assessment, assigning the locations to assessors, and then hands the baton over to the assessor. For each location that the assessor is assigned, he will download the questionnaire, collect the data at the health facility, and then upload the completed questionnaire. So this is the data collection. Once that work is done, the assessor can relax and be satisfied of a job well done. The spotlight then turns to the EVM manager, who must now complete the task. They need to review, validate, and approve the uploaded questionnaires. They need to finalize the assessment. They need to analyze the results, generate the EVM report, and download the CIP development tool. I wanted to give you a demo of the EVM Assessor app, but I'm not sure I'm going to have time. So perhaps this could be an opportunity to have another webinar in this series to talk about how the assessor collects the data. But if you want to see in action yourself, you're welcome to go to your relevant app store and download yourself. And just to note for UNICEF colleagues who are using UNICEF laptops, you're going to struggle because the UNICEF does not allow access to the Microsoft Store on your devices. So don't blame me, blame your IT system. So I mentioned that that's the process on the right. What the assessor does, they click download, they download the questionnaire, they visit the health facility, they collect the data, and they upload the completed questionnaire. And of course, like for managers, there's a lot of help available for EVM assessors. We have a user guide, a quick start guide, and other resources as well that EVM assessors can use. On the left, you see what the quick start guide looks like, which summarizes actually a lot of what I've been saying on this webinar, and the assessor guide on the right, which has all of the full details, like the deep dive, if you want that deep dive. We're coming to the end of our process here. I'll just talk about a couple of things about the final stage in the process once the data has been collected and the data has been validated by the EVM manager. We have a series of dashboards and visualizations on the EVM website that enable comprehensive interrogation of the ISC performance in real time. It includes everything, and I encourage you, once you have some data, please explore it. You can also view all of the descriptions of all the different visualizations in the EVM Manager report. But it includes the AQE reporting, availability, quality, and efficiency. It also enables you to download an EVM report template in Microsoft Word. This can be really, really useful if you're the one charged with writing this EVM report. And to my mind, most importantly, the improvement planning activities can be monitored and validated with follow-up assessments that can take place after that improvement plan has been implemented. In other words, what have you done in your improvement plan? And once whatever you've done has been implemented, how do you know it was a success? You will know it was a success when you conduct a follow-up assessment to validate that your interventions have been successful. This is what downloading the EVM report template looks like. As soon as the assessment has been completed, an EVM report template can be downloaded. Firstly, it will ask you what language you want your EVM report template to be generated in. And there's Arabic, English, French, Mongolian, Indonesian, Portuguese, Russian, Vietnamese, and Spanish is coming very soon. And revised version of Portuguese is also coming very soon. This template contains all the necessary heat maps and criteria category requirement scores that you need in order to present your findings as quickly and as easily as possible. This is what it looks like. I can only show you the front page because I don't want to show you any of the actual scores, which are sensitive country information, but it's a Microsoft Word template that is 95 pages in length. Therefore, you can see that it's extremely comprehensive and has all the information necessary. It's presented as a template because the authors of the report are very welcome to delete content that they don't believe is that useful, but it's better to provide all of the content than to not provide enough. I mentioned before the CIP development tool, and I can't stress how important this tool is. Once the assessment has been completed, the EVM manager can download the Excel tool to help them prepare for the CIP workshop. The reason this tool is so powerful is because it includes a list of every requirement score from the assessment. Every single key detail necessary to make an improvement plan is available there. And as I mentioned on last week's call, there are not more than 900 requirements that set the standards for the vaccine supply chain. Here's just a small smattering of them shown in the background here, and you can see how much detail is available here in order to make sure that the improvement plan is as comprehensive and as powerful as it can possibly be. So here we are. I think I've come to the end of my presentation. So I think just before I hand it to Alex to maybe give us a few, to take some questions, I just sort of draw I close the circle to say that next week we'll be talking about the next phase of this EVM journey. I've spoken about how the assessment is conducted and how the preparation is done. Next week, we're going to talk about implementing the improvement plan. How can EVM hand over to this improvement plan? How can you prepare better for your improvement planning workshop? What should you do? And how can you then start to think about the implementation of your plan and the monitoring of your plan? And I didn't mention earlier, but what I focused on in this call, in this webinar, has been what's highlighted in red here, the website and the mobile app. But if there's interest, I'm more than happy to do another webinar on the questionnaire itself, or the standards themselves expressed separately to the process. So thank you very much. Oh, and before I finish, I just give the link again to all of the information on EVM that's available on the TechNet 21 website under topics EVM. Everything you possibly need to know as an assessor, as a manager, as a decision maker who's involved in the CIP, or as a trainer to deliver trainings is available there. And if you're interested, why not download the app today? Why not create an account today and start playing with this thing? See what the insights you can gain and assess your own facility. Why not? See what insights you can get. Thanks very much.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Dan. We have a few questions, but to all participants, don't hesitate to ask questions in the Q&A box. If you cannot find it, just don't hesitate to ask the questions in the chat box as well. So let's start with this first one from Breno Horst. Sorry, Breno, if I mispronounce your name. Is there a demo instance which we can log into to explore the app? Well, this one, I think Dan is quick to answer.
Yeah, that's a nice question. I suppose the short answer is no, unless you're referring to my facilities. For the app, I think what you're asking for is there an example of a health facility that is easily available to view the scores and explore how questions are answered. We do have the ability to create an assessment on, to create a questionnaire on the app. It's called a standalone questionnaire, and you can use that to explore the app. But far better to actually create an EVM account, go to the EVM website, complete the setup, and then assign a facility in my facilities to yourself that you can then download and then play with, because then you will have full access to the full power of the tool, meaning you can enter the vaccine schedule, you can enter the tracers, you can enter the ISC parameters. But yes, if all you want is just to see the questionnaire, then you can in the app click create, and you can create a standalone questionnaire.
Great, thanks. I see that our colleagues Solo, Modibo, Olamide are answering some of the questions in the Q&A box, but we have some more questions. Pouvez-vous envoyer le lien pour le téléchargement et la création de compte EVM? I think we posted the link in the chat box, but thank you. We will also send the links by email to everyone. Another one, please. This one is actually directed to you, Dan. I once sent twice a request for EVM Assessor, but till now I have not received any reply. Any response, please?
Well, first of all, apologies if you if you wouldn't mind, if you could send it again to evmadmin@who.int, I'll do my best to search for it. I don't know. I do get a lot of requests, and unfortunately, the system means that we have to grant access one by one, which is rather time consuming. But please resend, and I'll endeavour to grant all of the access requests I receive.
Thank you. Questions about can we receive the documentation in French? We're going to post the documentation, actually the documentation related to EVM. It's available on the website, right, Dan?
Yes, on the TechNet website, you can find most of the documentation available in French. So it's there on the same page. I believe Adama is actually working on the revised French version of the assessor and manager user guide at the moment as well. So you'll have the updated version soon, hopefully.
Thank you. I've just posted the link in the chat box, just in case anyone would like to see to download the documentation in French and in English. The next one, let me see, because there are questions also like in the chat room. How to access the EVM website to create an account, please? Well, that was all about it. So I posted the link in the chat box, and then you can watch this presentation again in case you missed anything, to have more information on the logging and so on. Anything you'd like to add on that, Dan?
No, I think that covers it. I saw a couple of hands up before. I don't know whether they're down. I wonder if any of the other colleagues, Adama or Solo or Lemidi, might want to say anything, perhaps anything I've missed.
There are like some questions that were answered in written. So there's one from Nadira Sama. Olamide replied to it. Olamide, would you like to take this one? Perhaps read the question. I'm actually not sure I understand the question. So perhaps as you could answer this one, perhaps you can explain that orally.
Well, thanks, Alex. I think Nadira was asking if my facilities could be used for an assessment for a specific clinic or facility. And I said the questionnaire definitely can be used to conduct an assessment for a specific facility or site. Of course, we recommend that it's used. The best value is arrived if you use it for a facility that has a cold chain equipment, because you get a very robust analysis. But yes, you could adapt it. But my facility is your little house, like Dan explained, in the EVM app, without interfering with any country details. So yes, you could use that.
Thank you so much, Olamide. There's a question from Isabelle Quentin, that was also answered in written, but perhaps we can talk about it as it's recorded and it can be archived for people who would like to watch the video later. Is there an Excel template to help collect the health facilities data to import into the EVM tool? Solo, I think you answered this one, so perhaps you can go for it. Solo, are you here? So in case Solo cannot reply, who would like to take this one? Dan, would you like to take this one? If there's an Excel template to help collect the health facility data to import into the EVM tool.
Yeah, I'm just reading Solo's response. I mean, to be honest, the entire purpose of the app is to make data collection easier. So there's no need to use an Excel template to collect the data, because the app is the data collection tool. Saying that, there are a couple of points where some people may find using an Excel more useful, particularly in the interview sections. But in general, you would not need to use an Excel for this point, because the data collection app is like streamlined in order to make that data collection easier.
Thank you. I'm looking in the chat room to see if there are like more questions. Can you help? So question from Ksem Prasad, can you help group the questionnaires which are more connected with each other so that we can prepare a more structured assessor training? Who would like to?
I responded to that, so I could just take that. But just to add to Dan's point earlier, Solo's mic is not working, so that's why he couldn't speak. If Isabel meant that, can you have an Excel template of EVM questions that you can then use to administer and then upload back into the app, then Dan's response would be it. It's correct. Nothing to add. But if Isabel was talking about the parameters of the health facilities or sites, yes, there's a template that you can download and then complete for the list of sites and their characteristics, address and all that. That would call the locations and also the administrative levels that Dan talked about earlier. So that there's a download, there's an Excel template that you can download and then complete for the health facilities and upload back. That way, it helps you to set up your account. Shem, thanks for the question on grouping the questions together. As you know, we recently discussed that is being worked on, and an improvement has been planned for that. So please stay tuned for that. But the groupings are not always easy or simple to make because every grouping that you do probably changes the structure of the questionnaire too. But we're working on that. Over.
Right. Thank you. We only have 2 minutes left. We have to finish on time. There are like 1 or 2 questions. Dan, would you like to go for it? There's a question from Paul Kwagala Onyango that says, Dan, thanks, Dan, for the wonderful presentation. My concern is more specific to implementation of the findings of the assessments. What can be done to really work out the key gaps during the assessments, especially in developing countries like Uganda?
Yeah, this is a great question. I think the main response is to point to the CIP development tool as the primary means of ensuring that all of the findings are implemented in an improvement plan. Because if you're only looking at implementing some of the most critical or the most glaring issues that need to be fixed, then maybe you miss some of the ones that are underneath that are less critical, or even the ones where you're doing quite well but your score is, let's say, 80% and it's not 100. The 80% doesn't mean that you don't need to fix that 20%. It just means it's less critical than the one which is at 20% and you have to fix 80%. So the CIP tool, the CIP development tool, is really what you're going to be doing to work out the key gaps and implementing that in your improvement plan.
Thank you, Dan. It's 4 o'clock. Unfortunately, our interpreter has to leave because she has a meeting right after that. We have 2 people who raised their hands. So maybe Marjorie, thank you very much for your work. You can go to your next meeting. Dan, would you like to answer one of those questions of the people who raised their hands? We will not have the translation in French, unfortunately, but Dan, if you feel that we need to wrap up now, or you can, if you want to take another question.
No, I think we can wrap up now.
We can wrap up. Okay, thank you very much. I posted the links again in the chat. I will send an email to everyone. Yes, I wanted to send the email for the session last week, and I haven't done it. So my apologize. This will be done today or tomorrow, the latest, for the session yesterday and for the session last week and for this session. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. We wish you a pleasant rest of the day. Thank you very much, Dan, Solo, Modibo, Adama, and I think we have everybody here. So have a great day, everyone, and see you next week for the next session. And see you on Monday, mardi pour la session en français, and see you on Thursday for the session in English. Bye-bye.